Shane, welcome to I Am One With My Soul.
Hi. Hi.
What was it about I Am One With My Soul that resonated for you?
Well, I think the key thing is it was about just telling your truth and being open and, community-centered, people expressing themselves. So I think this is a great platform for me to express myself.
It's interesting you saying that about expressing yourself, because that's also a message that you're very clear and you express on a number of occasions in your book. So can you tell us a bit about the book, starting from a place of why was it important for you to express yourself in writing this book?
The book is the food waste philosophy, and basically it just chronicles my journey into cooking from a very early age and the people I've met along the way and the things that I've learned. And I think the key thing for me was just to express myself and do it in a very informal, transparent way, not be too focused on data and percentages of people who recycle, and not be too formal and too technical with the language, but just a book that anyone can look at a chapter and it can identify with them. And there was a certain vibe that I wanted to get from the book, that I wasn't preaching and having an ideology, but I was just saying, okay, this is what I've learned. I think you can learn a lot too if you make those initial steps, but if you don't want to, that's fine. But just the fact that you've read the book is you showing that you're being consciously aware of what you do in your society and how you see food, etc.
What made you want to express yourself in that way? What impact expressing yourself that way around food waste would have?
I think the key thing was I would do these cooking demos or talk to people, and they would say, oh, why do you do this? They kept asking me, why do you do this? Because it was quite unusual for them, based on just not just a young person interested in recycling and food waste, but also the fact that I am from a male from a Caribbean and African descent. So it's not people don't really see that much. So people kept asking me, so why do you do this? Why are you interested in doing this? So I thought to myself, actually, might as well just have a book, have recipes, but not just recipes, but talk about my experiences. And the same way I look at other people's books, my biographies or autobiographies, and they express themselves and they're being completely transparent. I want to be like that too, so people can see me as a whole, not just my positive parts.
And have you always been like that, like transparent and open and honest that way? Or is that something you've learnt through life, or can you talk a bit more about that?
I think it developed. Yeah, I think it developed. I mean, I used to always be blunt in the sense of giving my opinion about something, but internally I never used to really express myself until I started to watch documentaries and films of people who did that and the reaction they got and how it helped people and it helped them. And I slowly began to just unravel and express myself more emotionally. I think sometimes there's this like stereotype that men don't express themselves emotionally enough or about things in general, and sometimes that's true, but I learned from other people. They would do it and I would feel so amazing inside and think, wow, they really unearthed that secret or something, and think, wow, I was admired. I used to admire them and what they used to do, so I incorporated that in myself and said, I'm just going to be transparent and go with the flow and just talk to people.
Yeah, and having read your book, I can see that is how you write, and how you share knowledge comes from that place of you've experienced things for yourself and you're sharing that knowledge from the learning that you got from that experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think I didn't want to talk at people. I wanted to talk to them, have a conversation. In my head, I'm writing the book and it's like the readers sat next to me and when we're talking, I'm saying, well, I did this and I did that, and it's them asking me a question and I'm answering the question, but just through the way I write. It's just things that you might think of pop up in my writing, like, oh, actually, I'm glad he answered that. So there is a process in my mind of imagination and talking to someone in that way, like I'm talking to my reader, and really just unearthing things about myself and just a nice dialogue in my head.
Yes, it's really interesting you saying about imagination. That's another thing that I intuitively sensed in your book around breaking through the fear of like, what do you do with leftover food? You know, 'cause I always used to think that, like, okay, I've got this left over, but I couldn't think of like, well, what can I do with that, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a fear sometimes of knowing what to do with leftover food or knowing is it safe to eat it. And I think information is sort of stopped in a sense of generation gap of people used to smell their food and say, oh, okay, it smells it smells right. I can do something with that, and people are afraid to look at the dates. And I think with food, it's the way it's been seen now is so much different. When I've been doing my research of just throughout the periods of time and how people saw food and the appreciation they had, and the rise of supermarkets and the fridges and the refrigerators, and how we stored food in the fast food outlets. And it's just interesting when you think of what's happened now compared to the past, and it's just fascinating.
Yeah. What was the transition for you from cooking food and then developing that interest in cooking food that would normally have gone to waste? What's your next step really regarding your work and food?
Well, I would say food cycle. It all starts with food cycle. A friend of mine took me to a community meal, and I enjoyed the meal, and they had an apron on that said food cycle, and I thought, who's food cycle? And I asked them what they did and what they would do with surplus food that would be thrown away, and they made a community meal, and I couldn't believe that the food that would be wasted made this meal. I couldn't believe it. And then I asked, can I volunteer? They said sure, and I volunteered, and I had a chance to see the cyclists bring all the food that would be thrown away. They would have a couple of minutes to decide what to make, and then they would make this big community meal, and I couldn't believe the creativity was amazing. Every week I would volunteer. I would think, okay, what am I going to make now? And I would challenge myself, and it was just like a competitive nature in myself. Like, what can we do together to make something? Who can come up with the best idea? And it was amazing, and the feedback, and people would say, oh, great meal, I really enjoyed it. And it was just an amazing feel, really, to do that. So Food Cycle started this all. If I didn't attend that community meal, I don't think I'd be in this position. So they're the ones that started it. And as for what I'd like to do, my next steps, I always meet someone and they say something to me, and then I think, and it heads me into another direction, still within the food direction or the sustainable direction, but I still like to do some recipes around raw food. I'd still like to look at what's edible, what vegetables and fruit are edible, in the sense of reducing food waste and coming up with recipes. I'm also very interested in recycling as well, and working with communities and finding ways that people can recycle and making it easy, whether it's an app or explanation, and just trying to find why people don't recycle. And I'm heading in that direction, trying to work with councils and do more work around education and recycling.
It's almost like you just went with the flow. The word food cycle attracted you, and you just, without hesitation, just went and asked, who are you and what are you guys doing?
It was very spontaneous.
So have you always been like that, just in that moment, being spontaneous and then
Yes, I've always been curious about anything around me, and I just want to ask and say, how do you do that, or what do you do? And I've always been like that in general. I just have a fascination with things that fascinate me, and I'm very eager to pursue it or to learn about it.
You mentioned in your book about testing things out and experimenting with food, but also that's something that what I got from your book was that's the way that you've learned.
Yeah, I like to question things. Sometimes someone says, okay, this is the way to do something, and you say, okay, why? And they say, well, and then there's a gap. And they say, well, because I've been told to do it that way. And it's like, okay, but who started it? Let's trail back. Who started this? Why? Is this the only way of doing it? And you just question things, and you begin to look and analyze things, and you find different ways, different variations of doing something. So for me, it's always about questioning something, rethinking something. And that's just the way my mind works.
I must admit, even stuff like around food waste, I didn't know what to do with. How could I use like a spring onion that is going brown, but I can't think of what I could make with just a spring onion or what I've got in that moment.
Yeah.
So straight away for me, what it would be was I don't know what to do, or there would be a fear. And that sometimes is also happens in that thing of like, yeah, I do want to make a difference, but I don't know where to start.
Definitely. So, the key thing here is I don't think you don't have to make something with your food. You can still use your food waste caddy bin and still recycle the food. So you don't have to make something, but it's just giving you options, really. I think the key thing is that people have options and they know what to do.
What I'm learning from what you're sharing is what I can do is I just allow myself to ask a different question, to I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
Like, your natural talent is to be curious. So for me, what I'm getting is okay, just be a little bit curious, play around with this, treat it as a bit more fun. Like, okay, what can I do with this spring onion?
Yeah. I think you said about being fun. It doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be a big dilemma. It can be fun. You can say, okay, this is a spring onion, just like any other onion. If I can fry it, like, I can experiment. Do I want to make a curry from this? Do I want to make something from this? I can fry it, put some herbs, some spices, and let's see what happens here. And just see it in a playful way than a really serious way, which some people do.
And I think for me, my personal experience with a lot of things around like food waste, a lot of, there's a thing around environmental stuff that it's serious issue.
Yeah.
Okay. There's that serious vibe around it. And it thing of that can also create a barrier to someone who wants to do something, but because there's a lot of seriousness and there's a lot of energy of activism, like right or wrong sort of vibe going on, that people get put off by it, and they don't.
Do you know what? That's what I noticed. Yeah, definitely. I've noticed that so much, that people would want to pursue something, but you'd have someone who's overly passionate, and they would kind of put you in the corner and force their ideology onto you and expect results. And it does more harm than good. It's not something that I like. It's not a tactic that I respect, really. I can see what they're trying to do, but it's too much. And I think people have to evaluate their approach and look at what they're trying to get out of this. If we're going to do any type of change, people need to do it. One person can't do it. We all need to do it, but we all have to do it willingly. We can't be forced into doing something because the passion won't be there.
You're bringing a different energy into this whole sort of arena of what you can do with food waste, and the area of recycling as well. I mean, I think there's a lot more people out there that are doing more proactive stuff around sustainability, etc. But there's still a barrier, for lack of a better word at the moment, of that message not being accessible to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a challenge. It really is a challenge, because there's so many ways that people could do that, and if we all came together to talk and to challenge these things, I think it could be done. But unfortunately, what I've noticed is recycling, sustainability, etc. It seems to be very middle class at times, whether it's just the Green Party or whether it's universities doing something, or a certain area, a certain geographic doing this. And it doesn't feel like everyone's doing this. I think many councils are being more community active and go into different areas. But I think it's the way they explain these things. And, they're incorporating games now and, children's events and popping up in festivals because they want to come across as really fun and you can do this and it's great. And instead of, this is serious, you need to do this for the world and you need to save the world. So I think they have evaluated their response too.
What I'm getting from what you're saying is what could potentially work is like really enable people from all parts of the community to be able to connect the message around food waste, for example, or recycling, and in a way they then connect to food and nature and their environment in a way that relates to them and their personal experience and what they have around them in their environment. So that could be something they can do in their garden. If they haven't got a garden, like a community allotment, say, for example.
Yeah, that's the message is you can do it in your garden. You can buy a little pot of herbs or, plant your own pot of herbs, or you can do things, allotments. It can all be done locally and you don't have to think about the world sometimes. Some people, they say, you can save the world and recycle for the world. And it seems so too big for someone. You just think about your local area and think about how nice it is when it's a sunny day, that it's all clear and that it's all in the bins and it looks nice. And you can do these small bits to help your local area, your local environment, and just keep it to the local area first of all. And if you want to expand, you can, but it's just look at what you can visually see and know that there's a way for you that you can help.
Because I know you've said you were brought up around Bristol area, Bath area, is that right?
Bristol, yeah.
Yeah, and what I've heard of is a lot of those type of things going on around the the community and urban farms and community members coming together and
in Bristol, it's because it's a multicultural area. There's so many things happening. There's so many areas and people coming together to do things in general. So it's, I didn't see that side growing up. I think it took time for me to come outside of my comfort zone and my familiar areas to pursue this. But there are so many things happening in Bristol. It's really great for that.
So what was it that took you out of your zone to then be able to see what was going on?
I think initially it was becoming a vegetarian. Because I didn't have any friends who were vegetarians. I had to make the effort to seek out people who were vegetarians, and I felt very isolated at the beginning because I didn't know anybody who did it. And I would talk to friends and they would say, "Oh, you're a vegetarian now, Shane. You don't eat any meat. Don't you miss that?" They would look at me in a strange way. And I want to find someone who I didn't have to justify myself every time I had a meal. So that's kind of what led me to meeting a vegetarian, and then they tell me about something that they do, and I just keep learning from other people. But seeking out vegetarians, that's what started it.
I'm curious, like what made you choose to become a vegetarian then? If you didn't have anyone around you that was vegetarian, that's really interesting.
Well, my sister likes to mention all the time that, I was vegetarian first. She was vegetarian for like 2 minutes, basically. But she likes to mention that, I was vegetarian first. Okay, that's true. You were vegetarian for like 2 weeks. Okay. So then I watched a documentary and it spoke about this lady, and she was trying to be fitter than she was. So she reduced her meat and it had an effect on her, and she was talking about meat and how she felt heavy, and she was eating red meat. She felt really heavy, and when she was doing something and she started to eat more poultry, etc. and I thought, that's interesting, let me try that. So I did. I reduced the red meat that I ate, and I slowly felt better, and I said, okay, maybe if I stop eating chicken and fill myself with protein another way, then maybe that would help me. And then slowly I started to just take away chicken and fish, etc., and then I became a vegetarian.
Cool. So you've always it's really interesting talking with you, Shane, because you've always trusted in yourself, that you, in your imagination, and by the questions that you've asked. How old were you when you decided that you were going to be vegetarian? You watched that documentary, say?
I'd say 22, okay. 23, yeah. And I think it's about your intuition, really. I think you have to reflect on, when I used my gut feeling, did it work? Or and if it did, you need to trust in yourself a little bit more and say, okay, actually I get a feeling that if I do this will be beneficial. So yeah, I had to kind of trust myself. So
have you always this thing of using intuition, like for many years in my life, Shane, I would mistrust my intuition, and when I look back over my life and think, oh my God, this is, my gut instinct was telling me this, but I totally ignored it, and I got the consequences of ignoring it. That was my life experience of ignoring it. And like now, that's the way that I live, is I'm more open. I hear it now. I don't block it. So just talk to me about like is that always, you've always listened to it, you've always trusted it, like since a kid, or is that something that you learnt through experience to start to trust?
I think when you live in an urban environment, in a multicultural urban environment, everything's about intuition, because so many things are happening around you. You need to really, it's like a radar, it's like an inbuilt radar. Many people that I know from that environment have that radar of feeling of what's going on around them, and able to detect, okay, something negative is going to happen, I need to leave, or this feels good, I need to stay. And I think it's something that you learn to develop over time, but I can remember having it from a very young age, and it stays with you if you trust in it.
Yeah, definitely. How does trusting your intuition relate to your cooking and the message that you're giving out around food waste and the impact that you want to have within communities?
Well, in regards to cooking, I make something, I visually look at it and say, okay, this looks nice. It has a nice blend of colours, smell, the aroma I get from this. This is nice. It's on the plate. Then I need a second opinion. I always have a second opinion, and I say, hey, try this. What do you think? First of all, how does it look? Try it. And then, I say, so what would you add to it? Or what would enhance it? And it's nice to get a second, third opinion. So you've not just got your own angle, you've got other people's angle too, which is really, really interesting to have. And you think, actually, I didn't think about adding a chutney to that. Actually, that would be quite good, because you don't always think of those ideas. Sometimes you need to be in a room with people or have another opinion to bring that out of you.
Intuition is an important aspect of cooking then.
Oh, definitely. I always have to listen to myself to have a gut feeling. This is going to work. And, you do need a second opinion sometimes, but inside I think, I just have a feeling that this will work. And when it does, you feel good, you feel warm inside, like, actually, it did work. Yeah. So it's a nice feeling when you get that.
Something that's just popped up for me intuitively, food is also treated as a medicine.
Yeah,
as well.
Definitely.
So
I've watched programs on this, on just, curing yourself with food and the power of food and medicines and being made from food, from plants, etc. So it's about taking care of yourself, really. But food has such an amazing feel. When people are down and you eat food with other people, it can do so much. The power of food and positive people around you is amazing. Actually, when you see it and what it can do, it's amazing. I think communal food and I think it's nice because when you don't have a plate yourself and it's just open, it's not my food, this is our food. We can both eat and we're sharing and there's a connection there, and it's very, very nice actually. It's a nice feeling.
And it's interesting you using the word connection, because for me what I got when I was reading your book was the connection that you were making around the enjoyment of food, using the imagination of cooking, sharing, learning, and then connecting food back to knowing where the food comes from, back to nature, really.
Yeah, once you know the cycle and you appreciate the efforts that are made for you to have this food, it does make you think more, because sometimes there's just a kind of look at, okay, I go to the supermarket and I buy these carrots, and you don't see anything past the supermarket. They're nicely washed. There's no mud and there's no dirt on the carrot. It looks perfect. And when you go back and you think of the truckers who drive through the night to bring you the vegetables, and then the vegetable farms, and there's the people, watering the crops, or, and you see it, there's appreciation there. And I've worked on a vegetable farm, and looking at the hard work that people go through, it does make you think.
So is there anything that you want to share that we haven't covered yet?
I do. I think two most important things I would say is using your food waste caddy bin, recycling your food. The fact that your food is taken away and made into like a fertilizer that can grow other food is amazing. That's amazing that you can do that, and people should use their counsel and not put food in the general waste bin, because what it does, the smell in your kitchen and overflow bags and cats and clawing at your bags and outside and those things. So it does help to use your counsel and reduce your food waste. That's one thing I wish people would use a lot more. The second thing is I wish that chefs on television would encourage recycling of food, and that they don't do that, and that's something I wish could happen.
Okay, and is that something that you're taking action on?
Slowly. I've got like a plan into next year of how to address that, because it's because all these celebrity chefs, their shows are all on YouTube, and I've watched hours and hours of shows, and many have jumped on the reducing food waste bandwagon, but many are not telling you what to do with the food scraps that are not edible. There's certain things that are not edible. Let's say it's pineapple skin or something like that. They just cut away from the food and they make their meal and they say, oh, doesn't it look great? And then then the show's over. They never show you what to do with that. Do they put it in the bin after? Do they put it in the caddy bin? You never know. It's just left as a mystery. And I wish that chefs did that, because the power and the effect that they have over people is so strong. If they started to use their food waste caddy bins, I guarantee you people would start using it too.
So I'm throwing out a challenge to you then, Shane. What have you thought about just doing a YouTube channel on that yourself?
I have actually. People have spoken to me about doing a YouTube channel. What I'd like to do is work with a small camera crew and do a short video on something like this, but chop it up into small bits and reinforce that. So it's a plan of mine that I'm kind of wrestling with at the moment. So 2018, these things will be implemented, but it's something that's bothered me, and I did mention that in the book about celebrity chefs not showing the reality of cooking. And it's a shame that they do that, but someone needs to say something or do something to spark that change. And it's harder than it seems, but it can be done.
That would be, again, going back to that, what we were talking about earlier, is if they're on YouTube, and so many young people are like BuzzFeed, etc. Like that's where they get a lot of their information. And something like what you're suggesting and the way that you would record that in terms of as a video, people can pick up really quickly. There won't be a fear around like, well, what do I do with a pineapple skin, or what can I do with a banana skin? And I know you're famous for your banana skin curry as well. I think that would be brilliant, Shane.
That's what I'd like to do. It's something that I've been thinking about. Everybody has cooked something, and the reality of cooking is buying the ingredients, chopping it, finding something to do with the leftover ingredients, making the meal, eating the meal, and then washing up. And they washing up, and they never show what to do with your leftovers that can be eaten. And those are the two realities of cooking, and that's why many people buy takeaway, because they don't want to wash up and they don't want to chop things up. But some people don't know what to do with the food waste, the food that could be that can't be eaten. And I wish they showed the reality of that and showed a simpler approach, and using your counsel in regards to your leftover food, and even showing washing up techniques. I mean, it sounds strange, but it's something that people they just leave their plates on the side. I mean, the reality is you have to wash up if you want to eat some more, unless you're going to buy new plates every day. So it's just, I wish it was more realistic.
Yeah, great. I think you got a great idea there, Shane. And just going back to the counsel and the caddy, like, are those caddies not available for everyone, or do people have to actually request for a caddy?
It depends on your council. I mean, there are certain flats where they're not given to you, and they mix the food waste with the general waste. But most households, they give you two caddy bins. There's a miniature one that goes in your kitchen, and you can line it with a newspaper or a compostable bin liner, and then you put the small bag into the bigger bag outside, which they take away. So most councils, even if you lose one, you can go on their websites and they give you another one. But I wish people used that. If that was visually on television, if you saw chefs on television, predominant chefs, use that, I think people would look and say, oh, don't we have a food waste caddy bin? Oh yeah, my kitchen smells fresher because all the food is separated and is in the bin. And then this is easier. It would make it, if you say food waste caddy bin, people say, oh, I don't really know what that is. It would make it so much more commercial if they did that. It would help. So
and also knowing, like, how to use it as well, because I remember back in the day when they started to introduce recycling bins, and everyone didn't, even though there was leaflets produced, they had signs on the recycling bins, people weren't sure of what they could put in it and what they couldn't, and there was so much hassle in the bin men wouldn't take the recycling bin because they said that the wrong stuff was in it, etc., and learnt through experience on that one. But definitely like with the caddy idea, I think people were still hesitant about like what is it and how do I use it and what can I put in there and what about the smell and things. It's just those things like that. So getting those really useful, real practical tips about how to use it, what can go in there, and etc. It'll have a big impact.
It will. I think it will change the culture of food. I mean, if you look at the culture of food, it's shifted so much now. I think we're ready for another shift in culture in the sense of using your local council and being responsible with the food that you have, and knowing that you can help your council, but can also help yourself in the process. And it's actually help you, your kitchen, your home smell nice. There are positive benefits to this, and it's very, very easy to do. You know, even if you can't buy compostable bin liners, people say, where do you buy them from? Many people buy newspapers, and you can line it with newspaper, so you don't have to use that if you don't want to. And that would be so big if that happened. If I saw on television that was actually happening, I would smile to myself and think, wow, this is really helping the environmental structure of UK or in general. If they started to do that, that would be a really big, massive change if that happened.
So is that the bigger picture for you, impact that you want that you're working towards in your work?
That's one of them. Yeah, that's one of them. I have like a little list, and that's one of the things I'd like to do. I think it would be great, really. Also, another thing is, when it comes to it's television again, and it's not me blaming anybody, but it's just responsibility. I think we become so fascinated with buying ingredients for a meal that we only use the ingredients once. Like we buy a fancy ingredient and you think, what else are you going to use that for? And I always think to myself, that's going to stay in the cupboard. I mean, it's not, I wish that, I always promoted in my book that people should have spice racks and general herbs and spices that they can use for anything. And I think it would benefit people so much if they had a spice rack, or at least 5 spices and some herbs, and they could learn what they do, and they can make a combination of food which would really help through the week, even using the same ingredients. When you change the dynamics of the food, when you add those spices and those herbs, it completely changes the food, even if you use the same ingredients.
Yeah, definitely. It can be just a simple little thing of just adding a little bit of cinnamon to this and thinking, I would never have thought of adding cinnamon. I'll just go with my gut, and then it's like, wow.
It's amazing what you can do. It really is.
And that's for me as well. I come from that place of like, I don't know unless I try it out, you know.
Yeah, you have to trust your palate too, you know. Sometimes you read something and it says, and it tastes this way, and it's like that, but you think, try it. I've been around other people who cook food, and they would make something for an hour, and then I'd never see them try it, and I said, what does it taste like? And he went, I don't know, I haven't tried it. And I'm looking at them like, how have you not tried it? You've been working on this for 1 hour. You can get a small spoon and just try a little bit
taste,
of what you've just made. Yeah, just don't rely on what other people say. You try it and see if you need to add something to it. You know, don't be afraid of your senses.
A great tip, yeah. And that's also a reminder for me, Shane, actually. I love cooking, but yeah, definitely. Most of the time we're in our heads thinking about looking at a recipe, you know, okay, yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but the bringing in your other senses, your other form of intelligence, so definitely trust your palate. I love that.
You'll be surprised how many people don't try their own food, and then they look for approval, and you think, you must like your own food, just try it. And they're kind of hesitant, like, should I, shouldn't I? And, you do need to trust yourself sometimes, especially when it comes to cooking.
Yeah, I think that's a message, all areas of our lives, really, isn't it? Trust yourself.
Yeah,
and taking those actions in all aspects of our life, like cooking is an example, eh? So, yeah. Definitely. So what else is it? What else do you want to share, Shane? Like,
I would say that I'd say cooking, and whether you're actually cooking the meal or you're chopping, I find it's very therapeutic for me, and I do feel very relaxed when I'm chopping food or peeling, or it's very therapeutic. So, people who like therapeutic things, like just use their hands, cooking, just being a part of something where you are just peeling the potatoes, having a conversation with someone and peeling potatoes is actually quite relaxing, even though it was used as like a punishment, I think, in like those Navy ships where they would say go down and peel those potatoes or something. Yeah, it seems like a punishment. It's a punishment, I think it was. But I find it very relaxing, and when you're around people and you're doing something in a repetitive way, but you're talking, it's very relaxing, and a mixture of those smells and this aroma as well. It's a nice environment to be in if it's not like someone dictating to you, right, come on, let's do this, and you only have 10 minutes. That's not great. I like a relaxing environment where we're talking at our own pace, and it's a steady movement, and it's very relaxing, very therapeutic.
Yeah, it just reminded me of something else that you highlighted in your book around like stereotypes. and
Yeah.
how there can be stereotypes of, you know, like what it means to peel the potatoes. Like you said, that it's a punishment or it's boring, when until you do it for yourself and you experience it for yourself, then you'll find out what it feels like for you to peel the potatoes, you know, that it can be therapeutic and it can be fun when you sat there and there's a few of you peeling potatoes together or listening to music, you know.
Definitely. I think what I've learned over time is everything is subjective. When you talk to someone about fun, they say, you know, I was on a beach and it was great. And then there's another person who loves the wintertime and says, that's a nightmare for me. Being in the sun on the beach, I don't like sand in my feet. I don't like the sun. It's all subjective. Not everyone likes one thing. Even if you're outvoted, everyone likes something different. And the way that you see something is the way it will be to you. If you bring a positive outlook to something and use what you think is fun into what you do as an activity, it can be that way. Yeah. So that's what I've learned over time.
Yeah. Yeah. So if, like, the end of this interview, say, was an opportunity for you to share it, like something that you'd want to give the listener who's also sitting across the same table as us, a virtual table, say, having coffee with us or peeling potatoes even, while we're having this conversation, what's the last thing that you would want to share with them in terms of inspiration or practical?
I'd say this. My whole journey has been around positive energy and like-minded energy. So I would say to them, whatever you like to do or whatever you don't like to do, if the energy is positive around you, you will get something from it. I would say that. And energy, people with that positive energy, they can get so much from that activity or whatever you do if the energy is right. Because people can be very negative and judgmental and be very, but what if that happens? But what if it doesn't work? But what if, just be aware of the energy that people bring and support people with positive projects and support yourself with positive projects, and try and find people, like-minded people, especially with the internet. Try and find like-minded people that like the things that you like and pursue it, and try and be as open-minded as possible. That's what I would say.
Cool. What are your next ventures? What are you exploring right now?
Well, I have these really super healthy sweet and savory meals to do with raw food, and I've got the pictures, they look amazing. And next year, that I'm looking to sort of focus on that, because people talk about sweet treats and sugar, refined sugar, and I'm looking to just get rid of that and just have the most healthiest, sweetest food that you can eat as a pudding. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's all naturally occurring sugars, and just make it as healthy as possible. So I'm looking to do that movement of raw food and bring it to the masses. That's interesting. Also, I'm looking to do work with the councils as well. I've always have so much in my head, but you know, I'm looking to really put my flag into the ground next year. The people that I'm working with and what I'm aiming to do. So, yeah, you know, watch this space and see what happens.
Brilliant. You're making my mouth water already, so I've got to wait till next year then, eh? I'll be watching you. So listen, Shane, if what's the best way that people can keep in connection with you, you know, know what you're up to and reach out to you? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, my website is foodwastephilosophy.com. Twitter, I'm always on Twitter, very active on Twitter. It's at foodwasteshane. My Twitter, we put Shane Jordan into Instagram as well. You can look at some of my food, which is great. So Twitter and Instagram are great, and my website. So those 3 platforms. No, I think I've added it all actually. Hopefully, the person listening or people listening take something from it. And yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about these things and just keep talking. People keep talking, keep that dialogue open, and yeah.
Well, what I'd like to do is invite you back when the next venture that you're on is out there, and then just come back, and maybe next time we could peel potatoes together. But yeah, it'd be good for us to keep in touch still that way, and so that people know what the latest is with what's going on for you. Yeah,
that would be good actually to sort of talk in like February or March, and then I kind of look back at the interview and say, oh, I said this and now I'm doing this, and that would be really good.
That would be great. So yeah, well, Shane, thank you so much for your time.